Is selling in Tampa Bay for 2025 the right move? Can you still cash out on your equity? Or will concessions and negotiations eat into your profits?
That's the question. Today we're going beyond the headlines and reviewing what sellers actually walk away with when you sell smart in 2025.
And today I'm not doing this on my own. I'm with Tamily Abdo, of course, the woman of my life.
You forgot. Who am I?
This week, actually today when we're actually recording, we're celebrating 18 years. Woo! 18 years of marriage, because the fun fact about us, we got married in 777, so we're fortunate and lucky. And
That's easy to remember.
It's so amazing to honestly be doing this with you. And I love you.
I do too. Happy anniversary.
Tamily Abdo has been a realtor for quite some time. She's a top performer in the Tampa Bay market. She's also leading the key group. So love doing this with you.
Thank you for the introduction and making me blush. I love doing business and life with you as well, so thank you for having me.
Love it. All right, we're going to segment number 1, and the topic what we're talking about right now is equity doesn't equal profit necessarily. And the question I got for you, Tamily, right now, so let's start with what everyone's asking. I got $300K in equity. Is it time to sell now?
Well, equity is definitely great, but like you said, that's always not going to be your final profit number. You have to take into consideration the fees and subtract your mortgage, what you owe on your mortgage, your closing cost, any negotiated concessions you come to agree to, and then of course now in 2025, more than likely you'll be also adding to that the buyer compensation for the buyer's agent onto that.
Yeah, that's some new insight that we ended up going through NAR last year. And it's an evolution as people are practicing this more. There's more transactions happening. So there's a lot to find out. There's some great information on a free guide that's on our website. The description will be linked below. So feel free to download it. There's one for sellers and some for buyers. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about sellers. And one of the things that it actually talks about in the article is that a lot of people have a lot of equity that they own, which is pretty staggering. So mortgages homes with over 50% equity is 29%. Mortgages home with less than 50% equity is 31%. Owners that own their home free and clear is a staggering 39.3%. That is, wow, that is crazy. And it could be possibly mean, I'm not into like all the statistics, but there's a great article that references, but there's been a big migration from like the big states where like California, New York, and they're looking at moving at Texas and Florida because their money could go a lot further down here, down south. Especially a lot of the privileges that we have without no state tax, just having to pay federal. You could probably sell a $1.5 million home up north, come down with all the equity you have, pay a home cash down here, right? Mm-hmm. Depending on where you're at. So it's pretty cool. If you want this resource, it's completely free. We'll probably have a QR code here so you can actually scan in, or description below so you can actually download this guide. It's super, super helpful. So, and if you're wondering for you very specifically, we will offer you and have a strategy call with you. It'll be with Tamily or one of our key agents to make sure we take your data information, and we want to make sure we put this in our net sheet and we talk about what your specific story is going to be and what is the outcome's going to look like too. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds like we're promoting our website, but there's also another great free content in our link that you can have below that you actually get a free estimate of what your home is valued today. And of course, we'll go into deeper once you get that information, and we want to make sure we provide more clarity on there, because we'll ask you a lot more specific questions of like what kind of upgrades you have, right? Because that could absolutely impact your home. So pretty cool there.
Yes. Again, all tailored specifically to you.
So the question I got for you, Tamily, is, so what's really happening with pricing and offerings? Are sellers still getting top dollar?
I think in the market that we're seeing and what we're witnessing with who we're working with and our buyers, as inventory continues to increase, there's going to be a lot more choice for buyers. And with that being said, they are asking for more. So you'll be seeing, and you'll see this, a pattern that we've repeatedly repetitively have seen with all the offers that we have been receiving on the list side is that they're asking for concessions, they're asking for buyer compensation to be included in their negotiations, and not only that, but they're also asking for either for repairs to be made or to get credits for repairs after inspections are done. So just be aware and having a plan when you're working with an agent that you have this conversation and plan for this, so that you know, okay, if they do come and ask for, you know, additional concessions or any repair credits, that you budget that out so that we're, you know, planning to, you know, at the most part, keep your net as close to the number that you want as possible, but have a plan. And you don't want to make the mistake of, one, ignoring repairs or refusing to negotiate, just because we are seeing a turn on the market where the buyers are definitely gaining a lot more momentum, and you want to make sure that your home stands out from the other options, and the best way to do that is to address that ahead of time.
Absolutely. So if you got to fix the AC, we're in Florida. You gotta fix the AC. And there's some quick tips that we could obviously offer from like curb appeal that really helps you sell the house, and it makes it stand out, right? Taking personal items and removing them. When someone comes to your house that you're selling, you want them to be envisioned to be living there, right? Not you, right? They don't want to embody you. It's how do you put that customer there? So Tim, I gotta ask you, what is the most common mistake that you have come across that people are saying, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to, this is my strategy?
I think we're still seeing the theory that let's price it a little bit higher so that I have a little bit of a window to negotiate. And because of the increasing inventory and more choices for the buyer, if they're seeing that that house is priced over what the last one sold, or even what you're competing with when you enter the market, they're just completely bypassing it and going to the one that's priced well. So I think some of the challenges that we've come across is really having that conversation with our sellers and making sure that there's an understanding of what's really happening in the market, and providing them the facts so that they can understand that at the end of the day, you know, I know that it's an emotional tie-in, like, you know, these are your memories, these are where your kids grew up and things like that, that there's an emotional attachment to it, but the buyer's not seeing any of that. They're really just seeing that the structure, the bones of the house, the layout, and the value is there in order for them to pull the trigger and put an offer on that house. So I think it's important to kind of remove that emotion to it and really understand what's happening in the market and how do you need to position yourself in order to get that home sold.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a survey pulled where they asked many agents what is the number one reason or the number one mistake sellers are making right now in the market. And 58% of the agents said that they are setting the price too high. And that's because they're trying to align with their customer. They don't want to lose their customer. Which is what's happening is that the customer is now dictating, and they're no longer taking the recommendation and the advice of why they hired that agent, right? So make sure when you're out there, you're searching for the right agent, understanding what their pricing strategy is, what their marketing strategy is, because that's going to play in a very big tie. And now you guys knowing that pricing is the number one biggest mistake, like you lose days on market. That's not something you don't want to do, right? So like Tamily said, take some great partnership, make sure you take those emotions out, right? Because the people that are coming into your house, they want to envision their family, their memories, not what you are. You're moving on to your next journey, which is going to be a beautiful one, but this chapter is closed, so they're not going to have the same value, right? Like if you wanted to put in a fireplace, so you put these automatic blinders, like to create some shade in your house, that's great. I love that. But the next person may not want that, right? They may not want a fireplace, right? So something to really consider. And that information, again, is offered in our free seller guide. It's on the description. It's a completely free download for you guys, just to educate yourself and get ready to sell your home. Let's talk about some real life experiences that have been happening within our team. Let's talk about customer A and customer B, and let's talk about the outcomes of what happened.
Absolutely. Again, pricing continues to be a challenge and sometimes a very sensitive topic when we're meeting with our potential clients and when we do our listing presentations. So we had two sellers who came both on the market pretty much at around the same time. And seller A, pretty much, they were very open to what the market conditions were very receptive to what was happening, and were very in tune to what was occurring. So they were, they followed the plan, they were in alignment with our pricing strategy, and we hit the market, priced correctly, and within 3 days had multiple showings, actually ended up with multiple offers and getting it sold for above asking of what we listed. So that sold within a week. And then we have seller B, again, super emotionally attached to the home and the value, and rightly so. They did a ton of beautiful upgrades to the home that were worth every penny, just with aesthetic, with the flow of the home and functionality of it. But unfortunately, there were still new construction homes in that community that they were competing with. So sometimes when we do too many improvements in a home, we over improve with what's happening within the neighborhood. So we, obviously we wanted to test it out to see if we could get the number that they were looking for, but also having an understanding that if we don't see a specific activity within a certain time frame, we would need to react. And we did try the higher price point, and we kept a very close eye on it. And at this point, we noticed that it definitely was above what the market was indicating, and it put us in a situation where we were now chasing the market. We eventually did sell the property, but it definitely took a little bit longer, and it definitely affected what they could have walked away with because of the time span that it was on the market. So again, we completely understand the emotional attachment to our homes and the improvements that we make, but at the end of the day, we have to be cognizant of what's happening on the market. How do we create a strategy around what's happening so that that can reflect the price that we enter the market and get your home sold? We still sold both properties, but again, it's about protecting your net as much as possible and creating demand so that you can get the highest amount and walk away with a higher profit than sitting on the market.
Yeah, I agree. And there's in our seller guide, again, there's a couple of small things you could do in house A or customer A. There's small tweaks that we did. The agent went and changed all the lighting. All the light bulbs that were in that house, we removed them because it had a yellow tint on them and made them all LED, which is something super, super simple, but it brightened up the house, right? Mm-hmm. It gave it a different perspective, right? Something simple, opening all the shades is very, very simple. And for the customers that over-improve their house, there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's things that happen throughout your life that you wind up moving, but when you move into a house like us, we improve this house because we plan to live here, right? But God forbid something happens that we have to make a choice within a year, 2 years that we have to move. We also have to understand that the numbers are the numbers, and what we did to our home to improve it, we may not get that back, and we have to be okay with that. And the improvements we made in our house is because we want this, right? We want this lifestyle in our home. So there's nothing wrong with what the customer decided to do, but there's a reality to understand what the numbers are the numbers, and people are not going to give you for what you feel very valuable. That doesn't mean that customer X is going to feel the same way.
Yeah. And it's hard because you want to get what you put in, and it's sometimes what you spend on the improvements doesn't equal on the same outcome that you're going to get. So understanding that a lot of the improvements that you put on the home is for personal enjoyment, and a perfect example is your pool. Your pool in this market right now is going to cost you a pretty number. Like, you're probably looking close to 6 figures just for a hole in a spa and the cage. Nothing fancy, nothing like fire pit, this, that, or the other. And be aware that you're going to use that pool is going to be for the enjoyment of for you and your family, but you're not going to get that $100,000 back. So just be aware of that when you go into making expenses or doing these improvements. For the most part, it's going to be for your enjoyment to use while you're there, and you'll get some back, but you won't get 100% of it.
Yeah, our game plan here is to get you ready, right? So one of the things you do, we could definitely place a strategy call to connect with us. and make sure that we're tailoring a very specific game plan for you. There's also a free checklist that you can download on our website. And we're kind of almost maybe in the midpoint. So I just really want to share some gratitude and thank you guys for hanging out this long with us. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Hit the ding-a-lingy, the ringy thing for notification. If you find someone will appreciate and find value in this content, please share with them. It will mean a lot to us. And thank you for watching, but we have a lot more content for you guys. Segment number 4, the power of the net sheet. So what is one thing every seller has to ask for?
You said it already. Your net sheet. No jokes aside. All jokes aside.
It is all jokes aside.
The net sheet is going to be your financial truth. And before you make any decisions on if this is the right move for you or not, you should have a clear picture of what you're going to be walking away with. And you should see the numbers of, like, once all the deductions are made, what are you actually walking away with? And I've had, potential sellers that I meet with, and if that number doesn't align with what their goals and objectives are, they'll decide not to list because they need to either, wait a couple more years, or maybe it's not the right time to hit the number that they require in order for them to move on to their next chapter. And that's totally fine. So we take a lot of pride on making sure that, again, we strategize and set a plan in motion for you to get to your next goal. And if it means waiting for a little bit, that's fine, because we've established that clarity and we've let you know exactly what it is that you need to know in order for you to make that decision.
Yeah, it's super, super important. Like Tamily referenced, we've had customers come in, they have an idea of where they're at. We talk about the numbers, we talk about their net sheets, and the reality is maybe they're not ready, right? And they'll wait. Maybe they'll create it as an Airbnb, maybe they'll rent it, or maybe they'll just stick around for one more year in that house. And sell it the following year, right? But that is the power of your choice, right? That's also the power of having a good realtor to educate you throughout this whole entire process. We also offer this free service, right? There's no pressure at all for you if you want to have a FaceTime conversation with us. There's also a questionnaire that we can offer. It's called the VIP questionnaire, which you fill in your content and your information. It helps us gather that net sheet for you together and place a couple follow-up phone calls for you, and the description will be below, or the QR code right over here. And the idea is to educate you and to empower you to make the right decision for you to make sure you want to move on to the next step on this selling process, right? It's not easy.
No, it isn't. And again, at the end of the day, we take a lot of pride in making sure that you have all the resources, all the information, so that you can move confidently into your next chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. Segment number 5, emotional value versus market value. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but let's talk about emotions, right? Because this really hits home in a lot of different ways. How do we separate this? Help me as a customer or viewers go through this process.
Well, I think, again, it's important to understand and how to differentiate the two. We've sold homes that we loved. We've, created these beautiful memories with our families, our kids, and, there's an emotional attachment to it, and rightly so. This is where a lot of people, and you celebrate big monumental events within that home, and there's going to be a lot of emotional attachment to it. And we need to, one, acknowledge that. Everybody has that phase or that journey when they own a home and they're there for a number of years. But it's also important to understand that, potential buyers are looking to create their next chapter, their new memories, and they're not going to necessarily equate what your journey was as value to them. And once we kind of acknowledge the history of a home and things like that, and then pair it up with the market strategy and what's happening correctly, you can separate a little bit and understand what you take with you is your memories, your pictures, your everything that you've encountered, and then really just focus on building the next chapter. Where do we go next? Where do we go from here? And get excited around that. so that you can kind of detach a little bit and see objectively what we need to do to get your home sold. Memories don't show up in appraisals, unfortunately. Just activity of what's happening on the market within the neighborhood, improvements that were done to the property and things like that, and just logistically understanding that, but still having that sensitivity of the importance of what occurred in the history of that home. Two truths can exist at the same exact time. So just understanding that and walking through it.
I'll tell you, we personally and professionally have felt the emotions, right? We talked about this in one of our earlier podcasts about having a door, and our kids today are 14 and 16. My 16-year-old is now taller me officially throughout the summer. But we had a door where every single year they would stand at the door and we would take the height of them. And that door, as much as I want to take it with us, it stood behind. It's probably painted over now. Who knows? But I completely understand where the emotions come in and where events happen that are just historic, right, in your memories. But that's a big part of helping you throughout that process of making a difference, right? What does the market tell us? And how do we take that emotional feel away from it, which is super important. All right, we're coming towards the end and we want to make sure we land a plane for you guys. So Tamily, help us land a plane. What's your recommendation for selling on 2025?
I think most importantly, what you need to start with is clarity. You need to really understand the value of your home and what you can walk away with, protecting your net as much as possible. And really working with somebody that gets it and can really explain the process, but also put a plan together and execute that plan so that you can get the outcome that you're wanting. It's super important to, again, communicate what your needs are so that they can put together the plan to reflect what your needs are. We have, people move. The reason why people sell their homes is they're needing to upgrade their life, whether there's a promotion that occurred that's going to move them to a new city, your family's expanding, you had another child, or you had your first child, and now your 2-bedroom apartment is not going to cut it anymore, and you need to buy a house. Or you're in a house, you have one child, and now you're pregnant with twins, so you need a 4-bedroom. So there's a lot of events that occur within our lifespan that require us to make decisions and upgrade the home that we're currently in. And it could even mean your kids are fully grown and they're out in college and you may need to downsize or upgrade the community that you live in. You want an active adult community where there's events and activities and other people your age that are getting into that next stage in life where they're almost retired or semi-retired, but they want to be in a community that's active. That's another type of upgrade that you're looking for in your is why you need to sell your home. So we kind of cover all that and can relate to all of those situations. And again, super important is to have clarity, know where you stand, work with someone, partner with somebody that's really gonna put together a plan for you so that you can realize that goal into your next chapter.
So that's it, guys. If you're loving the content that we're sharing with you guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe. We focus a lot on model tours. We have some insight at a couple communities in the West East Chapel, Pasco, Hillsborough area. So there's a couple playlists that will be coming up as we kind of come to an end. So please feel free to subscribe or check out some of the model walkthroughs or some of the podcast styles that we do to help answer some seller questions, some buyer questions, and kind of see where you guys are at. But it's all about real estate. So we'll see you next Thursday for our next episode.